Thank you so much for coming back, even though I have insulted your sense of ego for some time now. It's what I'm here to do, right? Not really, but it feels like it sometimes, doesn't it? Well, guess what? I'm going to do it again today. I'm going to insult your ego. I'm going to make you consider something that you have never wanted to consider in your life, or something that you thought you had considered, but didn't really think it through. So you guys hang on, I'm going to get to insulting you in just a minute.
You heard a while, but that's just what people do. The theory is you always find somebody new. I guess there was a time I believe that was true, but now...
Alright, so I'm back. Now listen, I'm not insulting you on your personal whatever, this, that, the other. I'm insulting the fact that you have accepted things at face value. And that's what people do, and I understand it. So I'm not really insulting you. I'm really just trying to get you to consider things from a perspective that you might not have considered before. And to do that, I'm going to drag you down a few different paths that are going to kind of show you how that has worked. So hang in here and we're going to get to this. But before that, I want to give you a great big happy new year, right? Aren't we excited? It's a new year. This evening when the ball drops, please do not shoot your guns in the air. Actually, don't shoot your guns. It's just not a good idea. I mean, if you're going to a range and you're shooting into a, backstop that's built to collect ammo, then you can do it. But please, just fire a firework, okay? Shooting your guns tonight because you think you can get away with it is stupid. It is, okay? So moving on. Tonight is the last day of 2019, right? So tomorrow we start a new year, a new month, and a new decade. I've seen that meme. Well, do we? Do we really? We do not. We do not start a new decade tomorrow. 2020 is not the beginning of a new decade. I know, right? You think I'm crazy. You think I'm wrong. You're telling me. Well, everybody I know knows better. And even scientists are arguing over this. So not anybody knows for sure. Yes, we know for sure. Any scientist who is arguing that tomorrow is the beginning of the next decade is an idiot and an absolute proof of what is wrong with our education system. They have become scientists through indoctrination, not through intelligence or intellect or considerations. They have just taken what they've been fed and considered it to be, well, I'm a scientist, so it's right. That's not how it works. So if you think tomorrow is the beginning of the new decade, I want you to try one exercise with me real quick, okay? I want you to count the fingers on your hand, all right? So if you think tomorrow is the new decade, then you're going to say, I have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 fingers. You have 9 fingers, right? That's how many you've counted if you think tomorrow is the new decade. 9 fingers. So the start of the second 10 fingers would be 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 would be the second 10 fingers. But you're still missing a finger, aren't you? You see, our calendar didn't start at 0. You don't count your fingers starting with 0, 1, 2, 3, do you? Do you? You can't. If you do, well, you're irretrievably stupid, okay? The rest of the world does their math like this. 1 finger, 2 finger, 3 fingers, 4 finger, 5 finger, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that's your first decade of fingers, right? Your first 10 fingers, right? So when you start the second 10 fingers, where do you start? 11, 12, 13, 14, right? So you're starting at 11, not 10. You don't start your second set of 10 with 10. You start your second set of 10 with 11. So, because we never had a year 0, that is, if you're using the calendar that makes today the last day of 2019, then you started at 1, not 0. The calendar that we use, the AD calendar, whether it's Gregorian or otherwise, uses 1 as the beginning. It does not start with 0. So at the end of year 10, after year 10 has expired, the beginning of year 11 is the second decade, not year 10, which means that today is not the last day of this decade. A year from today will be the last day of this decade. 2021 is the beginning of the next decade. Oh, I know, but everybody counts it at, a decade from, the 10 to the 9. That's how they count them. Okay, you're right. You're right. Is that correct? It's correct that they count it that way, but it's also, there are a lot of things that are, popularly correct that are not actually correct. So if you have your whole life defended and argued something that is just not mathematically true, what else have you been suckered into? If you're sitting here defending that this decade ends today because it is colloquially accepted as having ended today, then you are defending public ignorance as definite, as the definition of anything. That is, if the public believes it to be the case, then the truth is no longer relevant. It must be the case. Is that confusing? Okay, well, let's do this. Let's do the second exercise, okay? Let's talk about the word literally, right? If I say that I literally jumped off of the interstate and flew 20 miles, would you believe me? No, you wouldn't. If I say that I had literally 10,000 rounds in this 20 round or 30 round magazine, if I said I had literally 10,000 rounds in here, would you believe me? No, right? Because what does literally mean? It means, that's a definite number. Okay, if I said I have literally 29 rounds in here, I'd be correct because I download by one just so that it's easier to load because I have, arthritis. So I have literally 29 rounds, not figuratively 1,000. But what has happened? If you open your dictionary today and you look up the word literally, it means literally and figuratively. Now it holds both definitions because society has used it wrong so much that it is acceptable as right. So now you can say I have literally 10,000 rounds in this magazine and you'd be correct and wrong at the same time. Gotta love it when people's stupidity gets in the way of reason, right? So now this literally has 29 rounds and it literally has 10,000. Both statements are correct. Just like this is the last year of the decade and next year is the last year of the decade at the same time. Because both are correct. Not because they're both mathematically correct, but because people are stupid. I'm not trying to say you're stupid. I'm just trying to say that you have been raised believing something to the point where you are willing to defend it and you're willing, you heard something that sounded reasonable. Somebody said, well, you're not born at 1 year old, right? So, you have to be 1 year old. This is how they say it, 1 year old. I don't know how that happens, but I'm going with it. You're not 1 year old until you've completed a year. Right? So you start at 0 and you become 1 at the end of that year. If we counted years like we counted birthdays, you'd be right. You would. You'd be correct. But we don't, and we never have. It's not how that works. So you would be right if you were right, but you're not right. We started at 1. It'd be like somebody being, what is your first year of life? Well, from 0 to 1, right? So what is your second year of life? From 1 to 2. Okay, that sounds more like how this calendar works, but you don't start out saying I was born 1. You start out, I was born on 111, which even then you're still saying 1, but it's the first day of the first. But the point is, when it comes down to it, you have believed something for so long that you're willing to defend it because it sounded reasonable when you heard it. It sounded like it made sense, and you believe it. Another example is democracy. A lot of us believe we are governed as a democracy. Now, I use that phrase the way I do on purpose, okay? There is an inherent democracy in our system, but that's a much deeper explanation than what you think it is, probably. You think we are governed as a democracy, as in our government functions as a democracy. In no way at all does our government function as a democracy. It does not. We are not governed as a democracy. You believe we are. You've been told we are. And we have come to the point where that word has been misused so much that it is accepted as something that it's not. So now, Just like you believe that literally means what it means and exactly the opposite of what it means, democracy means what it means and exactly the opposite of what it means. A republic and a democracy are antithetical. They oppose one another. You cannot do both. It's impossible. It is literally, the original sense of literally, impossible for you to be a republic and a democracy at the same time. They are two antithetical terms. However, because people have misused democracy for so long and so broadly, now if you go into the dictionary and you look at democracy, it is both applied to its original intent and the opposite of its original intent. So everybody believes, okay, well, we're a democracy because the dictionary says so. And the dictionary says so because so many people have been wrong for so long that it's become right. Oh. So wait, you've been suckered into believing that this is 2020, the new decade, and that we're a democracy, that every time you vote, that means we're a democracy. It doesn't. Understand the difference between suffrage and democracy. Please learn the difference. So you have been suckered into believing those two things to the point where you will defend them ad nauseum. What else might you have been indoctrinated to believe, and you're so sure of it that you will not even consider an alternative? What else is there? Well, minimum wage. You think minimum wage helps the poor. If you believe minimum wage helps the poor, then it's because you have been indoctrinated to think so. If you ever actually thought it through, not just listened to the arguments that sound good, because the argument that, well, if we give somebody more money, there will be more money in the economy, so everybody will do better. That's the argument that sounds good. It falls on its face when measured correctly. But in its most basic form, the idea that if we just pay everybody more, everything will do better, sounds logical. And so you can't understand how there could be another perspective, and you will poo-poo anybody who has a different perspective. Guess what, buddy? Minimum wage is murder on the economy. It destroys economies. It is bad for economies. It creates unemployment. I can prove it, and I will in one of my coming videos. I've just put it off because so many other things have come up in the last several months. But you are going to get the minimum wage, the indisputable minimum wage sucks argument real soon. So now, okay, so I've believed that 2020 is the new decade. I believe that our government functions as a democracy. I believe that minimum wage is good for us. Wow, and I was wrong all the way across the board. What else could I possibly have been wrong for? Now, again, I'm not making fun of you. I'm just trying to get you to open your eyes. See the difference, okay? So, what else? A trade imbalance. Everybody in one party believes that minimum wage is the way to solve something, and the mirror of that is everybody in the other party thinks that we have a trade imbalance. Both are equally stupid. They are. We do not have a trade imbalance. We've not had a trade imbalance as the U.S. has worked ever. The idea that because we are sending more money and they are sending more goods to us, there's some sort of imbalance there, shows the vapidity of your thought. It shows that you wanted to believe what you were told because it sounded logical. It sounded reasonable. But if your house worked that way, if your house worked to where you honestly believed that you had an imbalance, that things were wrong, if you were sending out money and you weren't getting it back in from the people you were sending it to, then you'd be in trouble. I mean, if you were, let's say, you're paying rent, is your landlord supposed to pay you back? No, he's giving you a home. That's the balance of that trade. There's no imbalance. If I'm giving you money, which has no usable purpose for me other than to give it to people, right? You can't, I mean, you could eat money, I guess. You could burn it for fuel. But aside from that, what good is little green pieces of paper? It's not. All it is a trade commodity. So you're trading it for the things you do need. So who has the imbalance? Nobody. Because everybody who's getting that money is using it for something else too. It's just getting handed around. So if I send $1 to the grocery store and I get back $1 worth of produce, where's the imbalance? It's not. You've been suckered and you believe that we have some sort of raw deal and there's some kind of imbalance. You're an idiot. You don't understand. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend you. I really didn't. But you really do need to learn some economics. You really do. You need to sit down and understand that you have been duped by a political tool that has always been the greatest tool of the left. We have dealt with, since the 50s, the left has argued that we needed to increase taxes on imported goods so that we could settle a trade imbalance. The right's never done that the right never does do that, but the new Republicans do for some reason. I guess everybody just switches around eventually. But the point is, we have had to fight against the left trying to do that for decades, for more than my entire life. And all of the conservative economists, woo, it's been one of those days. I've had like 5 cups of coffee. All of the conservative economists have argued against tariffs as a way to balance trade. It's just senseless. So something else that you just believe because it sounded logical on the surface, but you really don't understand it. So you're going to argue for what you believe sounds logical rather than understanding how it's wrong. Right? So, okay, you get the point, I hope. You should, at this point, even though you are spending more time arguing with everything I just said than actually considering the possibility that I could be right, you're probably saying, well, this guy's an idiot, but, he just doesn't know what he's talking about. You're wrong. I'm a lot of things, but I'm not an idiot. And I do know what I'm talking about. And if you would stop arguing long enough to think it through, to get to the bottom of the thought, you'd find out that there have been a lot of things in your world that have been told to you and have been accepted by you that simply are not so. There are things that you've just absorbed and embraced and argued for because it's sounded reasonable. I think I've beat that drum to death. Again, you guys have a really good new year, and in a year from now, we'll all come together and we'll celebrate the coming decade. Thanks a lot, guys. Take care.
You heard a while, but that's just what people do. The theory